This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
Hi, my name is Pamela Fuselli, and I'm the host of Popping the Bubble Wrap. Are you the person in your family who worries about the safety of others, about buying safety products and using them? Are you yelling, "Yes, that's me"? This is the podcast for you. Raising a child or children can be a hair-raising undertaking, and keeping them safe is a priority. Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast explores what you really need to think about as a parent or caregiver, and provides easy tips on prevention strategies. No bubble wrap here, though. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're standing in a store looking at boxes upon boxes of car seats, buckets, convertibles, 3-in-1s. How do you choose which one is best for your child? We're going to do our best to share important information to help you transport your child safely. Joining me today are Lillian, Jenn, and Justin. Thanks so much for being part of Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
So Jenn, maybe I'll start with you. What was your first experience with choosing a car seat? How did you decide which one to buy?
I could never have imagined it was so complicated to buy any one product that is so essential and, legal to be able to transport our child home from the hospital. What I found to be the most confusing was the fact that we have at the time we had two smaller vehicles, a hatchback and just a sedan. And what I learned in the car seat buying process is that not all car seats fit in all vehicles. And how are you supposed to know? We were looking at a couple of different models. We were looking at a couple of different brands. And I mean, I kind of have a slightly different experience. My mother actually works in car seat technician safety world. And so she was able to offer some suggestions based on recommendations from some of her colleagues, but that's insider information that isn't shared broadly. And that was kind of my first experience, was just being very confused and then being upset or concerned about the fact that there was a very good chance that I could buy a car seat that would not fit in our vehicle. And what does that do? That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. Car seats, for those technicians, I mean, it takes 2 to 4 days to train to become a car seat technician. So there really are no dumb questions about car seats. Lillian, how did you decide what car seat to buy for your kids?
We actually didn't know anything about babies, car seats, anything, because none of our friends had kids really. So we did what we thought was most economical, and we got a convertible car seat. So I know everyone always gets the bucket seat, but at that time we were like, well, they can only use it until they're 30 pounds and then it's gone and we have to upgrade them to a new one. So we went with a convertible that was supposed to go from birth up to 50 pounds or 55 pounds. And very honestly, they had so many different expiry dates. It depends on the make, the model, the type. It was hard. We did a lot of research. We were always checking that list that the government comes out with in terms of which ones now have recalls and which ones didn't pass certain tests and all that stuff. And we kept checking religiously when we were in the market for it. And even after my son was born, my husband was checking, I think, every month just to understand what was happening. Installing it, I don't know if Jenn or Justin had this issue, but we had a lot of trouble installing it. And maybe it's because ours was a convertible. It had to be angled a certain way so that when the baby is sitting in it, they're not upright, they're leaning back a bit, they're reclined, so that they don't suffocate. So I remember we ended up paying. We went back to the baby store. We were like, we'll pay the $50. Please have someone install this for us. They told us to bring blankets and towels to stuff under the car seat to elevate it at a certain height in order for it to be compliant. And it was just, for us, it was kind of like rocket science. We just didn't know how to do it ourselves.
Yeah, and you think it shouldn't be this hard. Justin, when you first were first choosing a car seat, how did you decide which one to buy, and did you install it yourself, or did you just throw up your hands in despair and get help?
I think our buying of a car seat was quite streamlined and fairly simple because we just asked a ton of questions. We found a good rep that had a little bit of time for us, and we just kept on asking about safety first. Will it work in our car? We didn't care about the style. We kind of picked the color after we figured out the safety requirements. And then I went and asked like a few firefighter friends about just, is this in? We're good? Awesome. And it wasn't as simple as that. Don't get me wrong. There was still quite a bit of reading along the way, but we wanted to make sure that the professionals were sending us the information that we were going to take in. There was no way I was going to entertain me doing my own research when I'm a first-time parent and thinking that I'm going to get it right the first time. So I just like to ask a lot of questions with people that I think are in the know. So the sales rep and then also the fire department was very helpful in that regard. Once we did pick our baby seat, which was a bucket seat, getting it in was a little bit of a, because they provide so many options as to how you could put it in. It took me maybe a couple of years later to circle back to the whole tether setup. I wasn't even once I got it in, I was over it. Like I wasn't gonna circle back to figure out all the different variations of how I could put it in. Once it was in, it was in. And knowing that we had a couple cars that we could put it into, but they had the same setup, is fairly straightforward from there for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, the number of car seats that are out on the market, and we've always get the question, what's the best car seat? And the best car seat is the one that fits in your vehicle and your child fits in the car seat correctly. And it hasn't been recalled, obviously, and it's legal for sale in Canada. But, there's so many, as you said, there's so many combinations that you can have between child and car seat and car. Jenn, you mentioned about, fitting the car seats in. If you have, 3 kids in car seats or booster seats across the back seat, which is the safest place for, kids to travel, some of the cars just physically aren't big enough to accommodate the 3 car seats. So, then the question becomes, what do you do? What do you do next?
Yep.
Jenn, you mentioned, getting some inside help from experts.
Yeah, what a resource, by the way.
I was very lucky.
What?
But that's just it. It's like, should there be? Should you need to get an expert opinion? Just to put a car seat in a car. We get in a car and we put the seatbelt on, and that's. Some of us it doesn't fit all that well, but for the most part, the seatbelt for an adult is something that is, relatively straightforward. Lillian, you talked about how much complication you had. If you could speak directly to a manufacturer about how car seats could be made less complicated, like if you had one wish, what would you say to them?
As crazy as this sounds, I want like an IKEA guide to car seats where there's a picture as well as written instructions as to how I angle it, what should it look like in its finished product, and very clear expiry dates on the actual car seat itself. There's so many variables in terms of, with my older son, it's now a booster seat or whatever, and the backing expires faster than just the base booster seat. So there's so many moving parts to all of these different variations of car seats and booster seats and child safety. I want a cheat sheet or a guide. Please tell me exactly how I should do it, what it should look like. Especially, I think Jenn and Justin brought up a good point in that all the cars are different, and even the back seat of throw at any brand like Toyota, all the back seat is different. The way it's angled and the way you would fit it in really varies. So what should it look like? What's the end product? What am I aiming for?
Sorry, can I add on to that? Because I think that that's an awesome point. But I also would love to see some better guidelines on how it should fit your child at different stages of their growth, including, and I would say that, I mean, I live in a winter city, but including when we're looking at how it should fit a child in summer months, how it should fit a child with winter jackets and snow pants. Like, I struggle sometimes trying to get a good sense of where the head piece of the car seat should go in relation to her body. And it's not really intuitive, and the manufacturers' websites don't always have clear recommendations on how it fits after that initial installation. Like, there's kind of a maintenance piece to car seats and car seat information that I think is also missing.
Yeah, Justin, you talked about moving the car seat from car to car. I mean, what message or what wish list would you give to manufacturers to make it easier for parents who are coming after you?
I feel like it would be great if there was sort of like a virtual workshop that you could just, plug into, and maybe it's recurring, but then also there's some sort of training that the sales reps at the actual facilities have that they're required to take, so that you can easily have assistance on site. The second you buy your car seat, then they can just help you or watch you do it and make sure that you've done it correctly, and then you're off and away. I mean, those are two sort of simple things that I think manufacturers can easily pony up and be a part of supporting a program for. Not that they ever want to spend more money beyond getting their products out there, but I think just giving parents the resources they need to keep their eyes on the ball in terms of making sure their kids are going to be delivered into a world that's already crazy enough. They don't need anything else to worry about. I think technology's changed to the point, like, we're doing a virtual workshop or podcast right now. It's easy enough to have a recurring session where parents can just come and ask questions about their model. Let's see some innovation here. Because parents having to like fluff through a physical manual or download a QR code and go through all these different versions and then still have uncertainty is just chaos. It's unnecessary.
Especially because they're legal. Like, you cannot leave the hospital unless you have a car seat with you. So, like,
right.
I think that there's an added piece to this, that it's not just, nice for the company to offer this, so we come back and buy from them again. This should be something that's either government funded or through our public health system to be able to support parents in installing car seats and making sure that their child is being safe and is sitting in the car seat correctly and answering those questions, because it's literally the law. We don't have a choice as parents to buy a car seat or not. It's one of those things you have to budget for and you have to plan for, and we need help.
Yes. And some of it, as I said, was counterintuitive. Like, who would think that putting a towel or a pool noodle or some of the other things, to get the right angle, as you said, Lillian, is actually a real solution to installing a car seat correctly. So, one of these days, someone will crack this nut. Justin, go ahead.
I couldn't imagine a newcomer to the country with a language barrier having to figure that out. Like, I couldn't imagine that being like the gap that they might experience. If they don't know the language, they can't read the information, but they have a baby on the way. That's just an extra layer that someone needs to help them. Who can we refer them to in a very easy way?
Yeah.
There's some thought needs to be put there.
Yeah. And how can we create culturally appropriate, depending on, what they're used to, from the country that they're coming from. It varies globally so widely, whether you even use a car seat to, the back seat is the safest place for your baby. So I know we could probably do a series of podcasts on car seats, and maybe we will one day. But I wanted to thank you all for your sharing your experiences with car seats and for your suggestions to manufacturers. Maybe one will hear some of the recommendations you've made on this podcast, and we could see some changes in the future. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, all of you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Want to learn more about car seats? Find out more about what to look for, their installation, and what seat to use when, as your child grows, at parachute.ca/car seats. That's parachute.ca/car seats.
It's time to open your parachute.
Katherine Hutka is Health Promotion Specialist at Child Safety Link in Halifax. She's also a certified car seat technician with 12 years of experience climbing into the back seats of cars to install car seats and to teach parents how to install car seats correctly. This is no easy feat, Katherine. Welcome to Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Parents often feel very confused when they can't figure out how to install a car seat or even how to buy a car seat. You know, they stand in the store and look at all of the options and think, oh my goodness, how do I make this choice? But it takes professionals like you days to get certified on installation. So really there are no, questions that parents, should feel bad asking. Why is it so darn complicated?
Right. So we do get this question a lot, and you're right. The child passenger safety technician training is a couple of days. One of the reasons are because we're looking at teaching people how to educate parents and families on all of the different options, on all of the different stages, on all of the different vehicle types and seat belts and lower anchors and top tethers and all of those things. But for parents and families, really, we're looking for that car seat that's going to fit your child, that's going to fit your budget, and that's going to fit your vehicle, which I heard from our guests here that they were having a bit of a challenge with. So it can be complicated. One of the reasons are that car seats and booster seats are regulated. And so we do have, standards where the car seats have to perform in a certain way. They have to meet these standards to be safe and legal and usable in Canada. But those standards do not regulate design. And so manufacturers, they're always coming up with innovative ways to better protect children, to better fit those car seats into cars, or to find other features that parents really like that they're looking for at point of purchase. So some of those things are cup holders and things that, don't really affect safety, but that parents, it's a big consideration when they're looking in that car seat aisle. They're looking for those features as well. Like, how easy is the cover to get off and wash it if you need to? Are there cup holders for my kiddo? Is it going to fit beside another car seat in the back seat of my car? And how easy is it to put into my vehicle? So those are some things that people get to make those decisions about, but that's why there's so much diversity. I mean, if there was only one car seat, it would be a lot easier, but we would close the door to that innovation about, all of the different choices that we have in car seats. And even then, it's Canada, so we have a lot less, fewer choices than we do in other markets that are a lot bigger than ours. So, yeah.
So there are fewer choices in Canada than the US, say?
And I wouldn't say it's not that many fewer, but certainly we do not get all of the cute colors that they get in the US. Yeah. Definitely. Because they have to test each of the fabrics individually.
Oh, that's very interesting. And that's, as you said, it might not be the functioning of the car seat, but it's or in a crash kind of functionality, but it's functionality for the parents who are using the car seat and might be taking the car seat out of their car and putting it in either their other car or their parents' car or caregivers or something like that.
Yes, exactly. And you were talking about how, it can be challenging and it can be difficult. And we did hear from those parents that were saying, I wish there was a guide, a book we could open And I have to say, there is a book we can open. So the car seats, they do all come with the manufacturer's instructions. And I know sometimes they aren't always as clear as you'd want them to be.
Yeah.
But I will say I just went to a conference in the US. It was Kids in Motion. It's a child passenger safety conference. And there the manufacturers of car seats got to present. They each got 8 minutes to talk about their car seats and kind of the changes that are coming. And one thing that I heard was that many more of the car seat companies are going to start putting QR codes on their seats that are going to lead directly to video instructions on their seats and to the printed, downloadable manufacturer's guide to their seats. So change is coming. I know that manufacturers are hearing and listening to parents about what they're looking for in ease of use. And although we don't have ratings in Canada, there are some organizations in the US that are looking at ease of use, like how easy is this car seat to use? Because we know that can, greatly affect how parents and families are succeeding, how they're able to succeed in using those car seats and installing them in their car.
Yeah, I think Lillian was the one who talked about, I wish there was a guide that had a lot of visuals that showed me, like, what is this supposed to look like when I have it installed? Or what is this supposed to, really visual. So those solutions that you're just talking about, the QR codes and the links to videos and guides, hopefully will take that approach.
Yeah. I know, especially with the videos, they're going to be much more visual. I also heard that parents were looking for exactly what should this look like at each age and stage. So I thought that was a really interesting comment. And we do know that parents are really just looking for, what is the kid in front of me, what should they be in now? Right. So when we do make parent resources, like as an injury prevention center, when we are making those parent friendly resources, we are looking at, we know that parents are just looking for the information for that kiddo in front of them. So we're trying not to make it, here's all the things you need to know about car seats. It's more, okay, how old is your child? What are you looking for? What kind of car seat are you using and how are you going to install it? And we're trying to tailor our educational resources to the steps that families are taking right now.
And I guess the different manufacturers and how the car seat fits in the car and the kiddo fits in the car seat, there are some common installation mistakes. I think one of the first that jumps out for me is moving your child too quickly from one phase to the other. So whether rear facing or forward facing into a booster, and sort of understanding what the different car seats do and how they function. Is that one of your most common sort of installation mistakes? And what are some others that you've seen?
So I will say we did a study. It was about 10 years ago. And so, a few things have changed in the 10 years, but a lot of it has stayed the same. So what we saw when we looked in the cars of about 1,100, we looked at about 1,100 children and how they were being transported in and around Nova Scotia in urban areas and rural areas and kind of different times of day. And what we saw was that almost everyone was buckled in some way. So everyone loves their kids. Everyone's trying to do the best for their kids.
Right.
That message, buckling up your kids, that's stuck, right? We've got that. So 99.6% of kids were buckled in some way. But the top 5 things that we found was, the first thing was exactly as you said, people are moving children in and out of stages too quickly. And so we did find that 30% of the kids that we saw who were using a booster seat didn't even weigh 40 pounds, which is the legal minimum in all provinces and territories in Canada in order to use a booster seat. And just to clarify, a booster seat is the one where you're not using a 5-point harness anymore. It's lifting the child up, and it's positioning the adult seatbelt safer on the strongest parts of their body. So it's using that, the vehicle's own seatbelt, and that's how it protects a child. And so 30% of those kids were moved into a booster seat too quickly. They did not yet weigh enough to use one legally. And the other big error, like you said, moving through the stages too quickly, was that 56% of kids that they saw in the seatbelt alone were not safe to use the seatbelt alone without a booster seat yet. And of those, half, so about 25% of those kids, were not yet legal in our province, which is the legal minimum here is 9 years old or 4'9", to use a seatbelt alone without a booster seat. So that was the most common error
Okay.
was moving in and out of the stages too quickly. And then when we looked at the installation and how people were using rear-facing and forward-facing car seats, we found that, let me just get the stat here, but we did find that a significant number of people, about 3/4 of people, were using a car seat incorrectly in a key way. Okay, so 73%. And the ways that they were using those car seats incorrectly primarily were the basics, right? We weren't reading manuals. We weren't being very detail oriented. We were looking for those basics.
Right.
Is their harness snug? Are they snugly secured to that car seat using their 5-point harness? Is it in the right position? Is the chest clip at armpit level? We were looking at that. So that was a key way, like where they buckled into the car seat. Our next thing we were looking for, and that we found, was that it wasn't attached tightly enough to the vehicle. And so using either the lower anchors or the seatbelt, it wasn't attached, or it wasn't attached tightly enough. And tightly enough is moving less than an inch.
Very tight.
When you're wiggling, side to side or front to back where it's attached to the car. It can kind of pivot at other areas of the seat. And the final thing that was a real key thing that people were missing was the tether. And so the tether is, when a car seat is forward facing, the thing that's holding it in the car is either the seat belt or the lower anchors, that strap, UAS or latch, as you might know it, to hold it to the car. But because we want to keep the child from moving forward, we want to keep them, snug to the seat, snug to the vehicle, that tether, that top tether that attaches to the anchor point in your car, it's a key thing that you really need to attach to make sure that child is as safe as possible in the case of a collision. And we found there was a high number of people who were not using that, or who were not using that correctly. And so that's kind of a message that we're trying to get out there to make sure that people know to use that tether. And it's legally required for all car seats across Canada as well.
Right. Well, Katherine, we could probably do a whole series on this, and we just might. But thank you so much. The information that you shared today is really crucial, and especially those tips on what you see as being the 5 most common installation or use errors for parents, that those are the things that they should really focus on. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And parents and families should know that there is help out there. So like you said, like child passenger safety technicians, or CPSTs, they do this work as volunteers, as community partners. They might be first responders, or work at a family resource center, or work for public health. And you can find someone who's open to being found at cpsac.org/findatech. And so hopefully parents and families who are looking for that information are going to be able to access those resources and find extra support. And there's also the manufacturers as well that they can contact for support. And they have great people on the line to answer your calls.
Great. So very important information. Thanks so much, Katherine.
And thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Popping the Bubble Wrap is a podcast of Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention charity, whose mission is for Canadians to live long lives to the fullest by preventing serious and fatal injuries. We release episodes every 2 weeks. On the next episode, the holidays are approaching, and we'll chat about how to make holidays fun and safe. Help us reach parents and caregivers by sharing this link with your friends and family, and giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Popping the Bubble Wrap is produced for Parachute by Story Studio Network and Eye Contact Productions.
This is Story Studio Network.